About a week ago, I asked the question, if comics go all digital, are you out? And this video thankfully got a lot of attention. Only one, idiot came in to downvote it because the one guy always does. Uh, but we got 204 comments. I mean, for me, I know there's other YouTubers out there getting like 30,000 views per video and all the rest. But more than 1,000 views, I'm thinking, hey, awesome. People listen to hopefully good. But the comments are where the real gold is. So skip, if you haven't seen it, the video's in the description. But let's talk about some of those comments, your feelings, and why this is such a hot topic for a lot of people. Hey everybody, this is Perch. It's funny when I say hot topic, it's like my mind immediately goes to a really kind of crappy, cheaply made goth wannabe clothing company. It smells like patchouli and weed. Anyway, if comics go all digital, are out. And like I said in the previous video, comics are going to go all digital at some point. Everything is. All books, it will go there. Now, the at some point is an interesting question. Because we want comics and books and just reading material to be seen by lots of people and be accessible, we're still a long ways away. The big barrier to fully going all digital is going to be these that everybody has a reader and an access to a device. That's a long time from now. The government's not going to give everyone an iPad. I mean, Apple would love that, but it's not going to happen. So we've got a tech gap that's got to come up. But and one way to look at it is think about how airline check-in works. So for a long time, you had to actually check in, at the airport. And then, they finally gave the ability to do that from home. And then, but you could kind of check in a little bit. You still had to print your boarding pass when you got to the airport. And then eventually you got to a mobile boarding pass and you have it on your phone. Today, people run around. It's funny, travelers that I'm with are like, oh, I could never live without mobile. Everything is mobile. And they complain about aspects of mobile. But if they forget, I traveled a lot in the 90s. And, there was none of those things existed. So if you think about it, from the time when tech really started to kind of come into the picture, which was in the 90s, it took 30 years to get to this point. So when we talk about comics going all digital, it's going to be that or more, because that was just one service is actually consuming content. It's going to be a long time before it goes all digital, but it is going to happen eventually. But the comments that I got were great. People definitely, I would say, just as a kind of rough rule of thumb, about 75 to 80% of people said they're out. If comics go all digital, they're done. They're going to go out. And then, but the more interesting part is kind of right underneath that, which is the why. Why would you be out? And it really comes down to kind of three things. One of which is something that people are just going to have to come to grips with, but the other two are really valid. The one that people are going to have to come to grips with is I like holding it in my hands. Now I don't think I'm kind of hand waving this aside. I'm the same way. I like holding a comic. When I did the review of Punisher Big Nothing and I'm holding that hardcover in my hand, it's a good feeling, a feeling that a tablet does not recreate. So the tactile sensation of actually touching the comic and moving the pages and having that, there's something very kind of core about it. And but that is the piece that is going to, there's not really an answer to that. It is funny though, if you worked in tech and you followed things back in the kind of the mid to late, I think the late 90s, early 2000s. No, I've got it wrong. Probably mid to late 2000s, there was this idea of a reader, and they were experimenting with this stuff like we'll put a texture on the screen to make it kind of feel like paper. There's all these kind of interesting things, and there's still some patents out there, and I expect somebody to do it, where you have a book reader or a comic reader, it's on the iPad, but the screen is made in such a way that the texture can change on the screen as you're touching it, as you're moving it, so you can get kind of different feelings of having to drag a page across. Now, what's interesting is I think a lot of people put effort toward that technology, and then when it rolls out, people will be like, oh, this is kind of interesting, and then they'll immediately turn it off because it's just annoying. It's just faster to swipe. That'll be the moment where people flip. There's a ton of tech like that where people rolled out things to kind of make you kind of remember. When phones first came out, there's all this like turn your screen into like a rotary, what looks like a dial pad on a phone. And it made some good commercials, and at CES, people are like, "Ooh, that's kind of neat," and then nobody used it because it's dumb. Once you see it in that context, it's dumb. But that's the one people have to get. The other two though are quite interesting. So number one, it's price. So a lot of people made the comment around price being just, if comics are going to stick to the same price, then that's ridiculous, and they should be cheaper. I did the video about comics price, and it is a big problem. The challenge is you've got to pay the creators. So there's this bad gap right now where comics are as expensive as they are for, in some cases, slightly mysterious reasons. The weird part is the pay to creators is not going up. So, a couple of people weighed in saying, hey, if you drop the comics, the pricing, then the creator's going to get screwed in that picture. Maybe. The challenge is, as comics have gone from $2.99 to $3.99 to $4.99, there hasn't been an equivalent rate change for creators. That's the dirty little secret in comics is comics have migrated up $2 in cost. There's not an equivalent raise going for the creators, the editorial staff. In fact, in many cases, the opposite. I think I need to get some actual firm data on this, but anecdotally from people I've talked to, sounds like the pay for editorial has either stayed exactly the same, which with inflation is a decline, or actually declined a bit, where the people coming in are making less than they did 15 years ago, which I find hard to wrap my head around, but there you go. The other one, in addition to price, the other one right now is around what I call user experience. It's like a guy Some Kind of Goat writes, I don't know if I'd be out entirely, but digital is straight up an inferior experience right now, so I expect to significantly reduce my spend unless things change. And then he lays out, I'm assuming Some Kind of Goat. It could be I'm not going to assume gender here. This person writes, the value proposition, digital files are nearly worthless. Yeah. You're not commissioning anything. What's the value? It changes the economy. Absolutely. And then the social experience, part of what keeps me engaged is going to the store and seeing people. And that's what I'm trying to recreate on this channel a little bit, but it's not perfect. But it is interesting how much, and he says the pandemic and subsequent pause and lockdown actually brought into focus just how much this human experience adds to the stories themselves. This is something I've been saying on this channel a lot, is that this community, and I know there's a lot of people on, that they make fun of community. I think even the, I don't know who's making fun, but people make fun of this community. I've been bagged for saying community. Community is really important in comics to get this atmosphere going, and that's why I get sensitive around blocking and around these different topics, because community does matter, and it's easy to destroy that. The middle paragraph, because I bounced around of the Some Kind of Goat's comments, technology and the reading experience. Reading comics on a backlit screen, like on a phone or a tablet or PC, sucks. I don't know if that's what it is that's different about reading versus watching a movie or something on LCD OLED. But if I'm reading for any significant length of time on one of these, my eyes start to hurt, and it can give me a headache and affect my sleep, depending on when and how long I'm doing it. An e-reader with an e-ink screen solves this problem for me, for, say, straight up prose. As a result, I do buy and read novels, even then they're simply mostly black and white, some manga digitally. But without some equivalent eye-friendly display technology and full-color Western comics are a problem. So I can answer that for you, and the answer is something called the 12-foot UI. Now, if you haven't heard of this is basically the 12 feet is the distance between your eyes and the screen. And there's different things that happen depending on where you are looking at the screen, where the screen's located to your face. So the experience and transmission of kind of both light and picture from a 12-foot distance is vastly different than from something that's held 6 inches from your face, like a phone or a tablet. And both the transmission of how the light works, how it refracts, how your eyes absorb it, directly impacts your head and the way you process information. It's kind of the background behind some of the e-ink technologies. It's how Apple has tried to do kind of warm mode and cool mode, but these are kind of faking how the light and the pixels work, and they're not. It's not accurate. It's not perfect. It's an interesting problem, and to me, I think all of this along with kind of the usability of how comics come in or stored or updated is a big problem, and unfortunately, I think this is going to require some real smarts to figure out how to solve this. And in comics, either those people don't exist, A lot of the tech departments are staffed by buddies of friends who are in editorial who are not the best and the brightest. No offense, if this is you, I'm sorry. I don't mean to insult you, but there's some, these groups are not prioritized. I guess I'll put it that way. Certainly not like other tech and entertainment companies. And there's no, or, there are people who know what they're doing, but those people are, there's almost like an arrogance that we don't want to ask for help. Right now, if you're running Marvel's kind of podcasts and their YouTube channels, if you're not talking to like Wes, you're nuts. I mean, the guy's grabbing an audience, bringing people in. He understands the mechanism of the channel and everything else. He helped me out a great deal. You're insane if you're not talking to people like that. But there's an ego to it. But anyway. As we go down through the comments, and again, wonderful comments for everything. My thought was I was going to read all these comments, but that would be about 50 videos here. But we also touch on piracy. That piracy is certainly inherent to digital and how it works. I mentioned that. As for people who say they pirate and go back to buy the book, they're either rationalizing or lying. It is true. I mean, I know some people like to make that case, and maybe you're the exception. But on the whole, comics don't work that way. I understand that movies are slightly different in how they've come about, but comics and books, there's no proof that's how those have actually functioned. I think that, if you see, like I said, a lot of people said they would straight up walk away if they went digital. They're only down to a few titles anyway. A lot of people feel like they're already on the way out, and digital would be the thing that would push it kind of over the edge. But again, it really comes down to pricing, that the perception of price is a problem. It comes down to the long-term viability of the comic. If you are buying them for collecting reasons, then digital blows that up. If you're buying it to get commissions on artwork, then how does that even work anymore? And one thing that people aren't talking about a lot with digital is you have to create a marketplace for readers, for the creators. Creators are used to being able to sell their artwork and being able to create kind of a back-end business. And if we're going to do everything digital and we're going to have that complete approach, it's going to really, shoot a hole through a lot of their business. That's going to be a problem. And then, as people say, eye strain, user interface, these kinds of these tech problems. How do you solve that? And I think it's interesting. It's very interesting. I expected something similar to this, but what I didn't expect, I guess, was people really going to the details. I should expect that by now from my audience. You guys are really, really smart and clever about things. I love the details around why they're out, why this would be a problem. So it's very, very interesting how it all works. Anyway, I want to just say thanks for the people who came on here. It is a problem. And I guess the thing that I've been saying in my videos is it is inevitable. Comics are going digital at some point. Again, maybe not tomorrow, but yes, they are going digital at some point. So, one way or another, it's going to have to be figured out. Hey, thanks for the comments. If you have any other thoughts on this, please do. Have you thought about it a little bit more? And I guess the thing that I'm going to be thinking about and talking about more is, what does that path look like? If it's inevitable that we're going digital at some point, what are the pieces that we have to make sure we maintain? There's very little we can do around the eye strain, and so we're relying on the technology for that. But there is a lot we can do around the price, the collectability, how the formats come, how they're delivered, and how they're marketed. There's a lot that can be done there and need to be done. So, there's there. And I'll end with this, Anthony Lombardi writes, "There's no way I'm out. Comics is my go-to happy place. I'd buy on Amazon and Comixology as well as back Kickstarter campaigns. It's all about the story and the art for me, which I can deal with digitally. I'll continue to buy because I want the artists and the writers to get paid for their work. It's not their fault the future is coming one way or another. It'll kill me not to be able to go to a comic store and talk with people and feel the physical copies, but I can't stop reading." I suspect that's likely true of a lot of people. There is something very compelling about these stories one way or another. So that's why it's important for us to figure out the solution. Anyway, thanks everybody for listening. Follow me on social media. I'm at Comic Perch, and subscribe, all that kind of stuff. I'm doing it all in the wrong order today. Thanks for listening.